Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Hi, Shaheen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I mean, I'm just, it's lunchtime here, but I think we're keeping you up pretty late. Where are you at and what time is it where you are?
Yeah, I'm in Malaga, Spain, and it's 9:30 p.m. here.
Well, thank you so much for staying up late and coming on the memoQ Talks podcast. How's life in Malaga? It's interesting. I have three boys, and one of my sons is playing soccer about a half hour outside of Malaga, and he loves it. I mean, but how long have you been there?
Okay, I've been here I've been in Spain for like 14 years, about half that time in Malaga. I was in Madrid the rest of the time. And actually, that's where I started my company. So VeraContent's based in Madrid still.
Awesome. And did you grow up in Ohio? I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I saw Ohio and then I saw Andalusia and Malaga.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Ohio. My mom's whole side of the family's from Ohio, Akron area, and my dad is from Iran. He went to Akron University, so that's how they met.
Awesome.
University of Akron, I guess it's called.
So you speak English, Spanish, any Farsi?
A little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not too much.
Is it living as an American in Spain? How is that? I mean, is it just it is what it is? I mean, I lived overseas for 20 something years, but I have no experience. I've visited Spain, but what's your experience been there?
Yeah, well, like I lived in Ohio pretty much my whole life before moving to Spain, so it was a big change, but a positive one. I really like Spain. Like I said, I stayed here 14 years, so must have had something.
Something must be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we talk to a variety of subject matter experts, but I rarely I can't recall anybody that really focuses on localization for marketing projects, right? And there are some very important nuances related to the localization of marketing content or the creating of multilingual marketing content. I want to talk to you about that. How do you scale operations to manage multiple different languages, and then maybe some of the tools like related to AI and how they're being used. And maybe we can talk about, if we have time, some of the different social media platforms and, what are some of the techniques that you use to localize content for that? That's a lot of stuff to cover. But before we do that, maybe can you just give us the elevator pitch, from here to the 10th floor of what is VeraContent? How was it created and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so VeraContent, we call ourselves a multilingual content marketing agency. Like I said, we've been in business 8 years now, and we're really specialized in marketing localization, but focused on kind of editorial-style content, so content for blogs as well as social media. And the area of social media has grown tremendously, as I'm sure you can imagine. I mean, the demand for translation of social media content has increased a lot over the last few years, and that's basically since we started the business. In the early days we happened to get some projects in that area as we specialize in marketing, and then that side of the business grew. So now we have like a dedicated social media team, and we actually do a lot more than just when we started it was like localization of social media. Now we do actually create entire global social media strategies and manage all the pages in all the different languages, and oftentimes create totally different approaches in the different markets, because I think a lot of people are seeing that it's not enough to translate. Like you do need to have like a focused approach in every market. And also I think, of course, the way companies would do this in the past is like hire a local agency, but it also gets quite unwieldy to hire agencies in every country in the world. So we offer a centralized service for that.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot there to discuss. First, I'm curious, when you talk with customers, because again, you said you are a marketing localization agency. I might have got that the word order mixed up there, but there's an emphasis both on marketing and on localization. When you start talking to prospective customers or new customers who come back with a new project, do you talk about the end objective first? Like, okay, so we did a project for a chain of hotels in Japan, and they had like 100 properties, and they wanted to go in 3 different languages. And everybody else had been talking to them about just the translation. And we started talking to them about, why are you doing this? Well, we want conversions, right? And how are you going to track that? And, and what about keywords, all that kind of the SEO part, and then some of the SEM. Where do you start the conversation?
Yeah, I think that's something that we've kind of like learned over in our experience in this business. It's like when we did start out specialized in marketing localization. So translating marketing content basically, and transcreation, creative adaptation of that content. But we saw over time that like what our clients needed was more than just the adaptation of the content. They needed they needed to see results from that and needed to like tie into their overall marketing strategy. And a lot of them needed to have like really specialized strategies, like not only the different like not just adapting the content you're using in the US and copy pasting it into different languages and publishing it around the world, but actually like thinking about if that content's really going to work there, what approach you want to take there. And now obviously with social media, we do a lot of things like ad campaigns on social media, partnerships with influencers in the local markets and all of that. So it goes way beyond just translating the words. And that's, so to answer your question, absolutely, when we first have that first conversation with the client, it's talking about their objectives and what they want to achieve in those markets, not just
how many words do they want translated into how many different languages, right? So, so let's look at this from a couple of different angles. One is SEO, which, you have, obviously Google is the dominant search engine in many countries, but not all. Japan, Korea, China are huge exceptions, for example. But when you talk about SEO, you're basically creating content that hopefully will be somehow it will be ranked higher than the competition, based upon the frequency of the keywords, there's several different things. Maybe you can talk about how you do an SEO project, because I can't imagine just creating some content and then passing it to a translator and say, please translate that, because it might just fall flat from the SEO perspective.
Yeah, I mean, for any like multilingual SEO project that we have, it's, oftentimes we'll start with like content in one language but it's not just translating the blog posts or landing pages. It's basically doing SEO research for those markets, finding equivalent keywords. But oftentimes it's not just the translation of the keywords. It's like doing research for each market, like what are people actually searching for, which might be different keywords. And then crafting the content around those keywords. And also something to keep in mind when on those types of projects is also, like depending on what the topic is, you might have to actually write the article from a different angle or think about like for example, we did a project, a real estate blog where we were writing about regulations, real estate related regulations, like how to, like what's landlord tenant law and things like that. And of course that like varies across every market.
Right. Oh,
so you actually have to do like different research. And also, of course, the keywords related to that would be different for the markets depending on what terminology they use and all that.
So, I mean, there's like, again, I come from this traditional kind of LSP space where the project comes in and you give it to a translator and they translate into their target language, right? Or into the target language. But you just touched on, okay, there is the localization element of it. There's also the doing the research related to the keywords, and for depending on what search engine you're trying to rank in or for with, it might not be keywords. It might be, how do we get backlinks? It could be a bunch of other things, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
And then you have also, well, maybe you need to do research on, in your example, what the local regulations are, because you can't just translate what you did before because the regulations are going to be different. How do you, from a workflow perspective, where do you start and how do you do that? Because it's way more complicated than this traditional workflow.
How do we do it? Basically we have our project management system. So, it's where we keep organized all of our requests. It depends on every client project. Like we set up a workflow with the client that oftentimes is adapting to their internal workflow because we are basically acting as an extension of the client's team. Like we're kind of their outsourced content creation and localization department. So and depending on the project, we might be doing more of one thing or the other. So yeah, but in general, like we work with the project management software to collaborate with the client. I mean,
I guess
they can say
what I'm getting at is like, do you start with, okay, do we start with the keywords and okay, have the keyword researcher and then the keywords you give them to the the translator because you're going to want them to, try to use those keywords as often as possible? Or do you start with the translation, or do you start with, okay, hey, we've got to create the content customized for that market? I mean, where do you start?
Yeah. Okay. So that also has to do with, I mean, in general, we're working with like a certain time frame of like, say, oftentimes it's like monthly calendar. So we're doing a monthly content calendar for the blog. We start with the calendar in one language and doing the keyword research for that language. And then we would do the research in the other languages. And basically it's the project manager who's working with the SEO specialist who's doing the keyword stuff and then assigning that to the writers once the keywords have been identified. And the SEO specialist oftentimes the best practice is to create kind of an outline of what are the priority keywords and kind of like where you would want to fit them in and have a, like kind of instructions for the writer on that.
Okay, awesome. There's a couple arguments. One is, hey, you have to create super high quality content that will hopefully get shared, and then obviously you could get the backlinks. There's another argument that says, you know what? Really, people don't read a lot of blog posts on your typical company blog. What you're doing is you're posting content so that the algorithm for whatever searches that says, hey, they're posting updates every day. Let's rank this or and what's the word? Crawl it and then rank it higher. How do you advise clients? Should they go for quantity versus quality or quality versus quantity or a hybrid?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's one right answer to that. Of course, depends on a lot of things. But I say in general, I think you kind of need to have some key pieces of content that are super high quality. So you need to have maybe certain touch points that you really want to make sure that certain pieces of content that you're promoting, like your downloadables or white papers or priority content on your website that you're driving a lot of people to, and that needs to be like I guess like above and beyond in terms of the level of research and the effort that's gone behind it. But I'd say there is also still, of course, like just like what do you call it? Like content farm type content that is just being like, that has no value. I'd say there's no place for that. It's not needed. But there is, I still think, an argument for quantity as well, to do like a certain level of quality, but maybe that's not as maybe thoroughly as research, but it's on certain key topics. And I think it's about like identifying those topics that you want to be seen as knowledgeable on, and like making a lot of content around that kind of supports those like pillar pieces of content that are like the key ones that are the ones you really want to drive people to, but then have a lot of content around those topics that support it to also for the search engines make you an authority on that topic.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And I might catch some flack for this, but finding a translator for me, and maybe it's again because I come from an LSP background, is much easier than finding a good copywriter. Okay. Or somebody who's a transcreationist artist. Do you agree or disagree? And if you, either way, how do you find writers, and do you have a testing process, and how do you help them kind of, because it can be challenging because they might have to go across a variety of subjects as well.
Yeah. So I agree. And definitely I think that's something that's really set us apart from the beginning is that we're like good at identifying writing talent. And so we've built up this database of writers who we work with across languages. And, I think that's really like a selling point for us. And in terms of how to find them, well, one, I think actually we've really built a community around what we do in our business. And so we have like a Facebook community, we have, and we're just involved in the content creator space where I think a lot of people know us, I don't know, we have a lot of people coming to us. So we get a lot of applications directly on our website. Like every day we get probably 20 applications. So we're like always, new talent is coming to us. We're also, of course, as needed for certain projects, posting ads on all the job posting sites you can think of. And then when it comes to vetting them, we have a process for that. Although I'd say a really big factor for me, like even before we did the point of testing, is their cover letter. Because no matter what, even if they're applying like to write in a language that I don't know, the way they organize the information in their cover letter really gives you a sense of like if they know how to write or not, or if they just put it into ChatGPT and don't know how to prompt ChatGPT. So that's kind of like the first filter. But then but of course we have a test for every new writer, and then we kind of have like a process for trying people out. And then if they pass those test assignments, after a certain amount of time, we also have like rating system for rating what types of assignments they can handle, and the kind of like, and whether they can graduate to being like a editor. So someone who can judge other people's work.
That's awesome. And again, I think for, so I'm running a SaaS platform called Breeze. It's an RFP response platform. That's my main gig right now. And on the marketing side, probably the most challenging thing that is just finding people who can write high quality articles that also understand the RFP response process, right? They're subject matter experts, and people will say, "Oh, I can do it," and I'm really optimistic. Really, you can do it? You give it a shot, and then you get it back, and you're like, and so it's been challenging. Another challenge that is ChatGPT, which you just mentioned, or some of these other tools. Let me ask you, how often do you see writers using them? When is it effective? When is it not? And can you spot immediately that, hey, this is kind of AI derived or supported or created?
Yeah, I think at this point, like everybody is using it all the time.
Okay.
So it's, and that's been a challenge for us, is like, we've been really working on, like, we've done a lot of, we had what we call the AI task force, where we were like testing all the tools and seeing how we could like incorporate tools into our processes. But of course, like regardless if we tell linguists to use AI, they're going to use AI. So I think the important thing for us was like creating guidelines and being like, okay, if you're going to use AI, this is how you should use it. And actually, increasingly, I think everyone expects that you will use it. It's like inefficient not to use it. So it's like, okay, how to use it and get the results that we want, and the results that will match the expectations of our clients. And so we've really been working on that, and like basically creating tools for sharing prompts across the team, so that we're using good prompts, not crappy prompts, because crappy prompts get you crappy results. But yeah, it's totally been transformational in our industry, and it's really interesting how it's seeing how it's shaping up. So, but we realized like we need to become experts on using it, basically, because that's now what our job involves. So
totally.
Yeah.
I have always tried to just do my own writing. And I use the AI and ChatGPT and some of the other tools for other tasks, that are more like productivity enhancers or sometimes research, etc. But when it comes to like writing, whether it's an article or for example, yesterday I had to write an introduction to or a description of a webinar that we're going to be hosting. And it was like, it's been on my to-do list for like 2 weeks. And I said, you know what? I don't know. Because to write, I need the time to focus. I need quiet time. And it only would take me literally like a half hour normally to do that. But I just don't have time. It's the end of the year and all this stuff's going on. And I said, I wonder what ChatGPT could do. And then I put in a pretty specific prompt, and I had to make like 2 edits to the whole thing. And I'm like, this is pretty good. And I'm like, why did we, everybody else is, but there was part of me that didn't want to let go of the writing. I just thought, and maybe it's because I see a lot of bad examples of people, like the people who do outreach via, emails or via LinkedIn trying to sell you something. Sometimes it's very clearly, their whole message has been written by ChatGPT. And then I feel, well, that's not very sincere or authentic, right? And it's a kind of immediate turnoff. But to your point, it's like, you know what? Better make friends with it, because it is a pretty damn good productivity enhancer.
Yeah, I mean, if you can tell that it's been written by AI, then it means that they're using the tool badly. Like they're not giving it the right prompt. They're asking it to do the heavy lifting of the work for them, but it's like you still have to do the thinking behind the writing. Like you can't rely on the machine for that. It can help you. It should be considered an assistant, not a replacement for your own brain.
So one of the dilemmas, and I'm curious if you have an opinion about this, is, okay, you take a tool like Grammarly, right? Grammarly oftentimes it'll spot my typos, thank goodness, but oftentimes it'll just make recommendations that are more stylistic. And I'm like, I wouldn't say it that way, but I'm wondering, like, okay, if we all defer to Grammarly because it's easy, quick, and or these tools, that the tools start to train us. We start to communicate in a different way. We start to communicate in that kind of generic AI kind of, supported way. And then after a while, we get to fewer and fewer styles because AI learns, right? It's like, okay, you know what? Everybody's using this style, which we suggested, and now it's becoming more frequent. So we're going to use it more and more and more. Like, do you see that as a dilemma at all?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way exactly, but it is a good point. I definitely feel myself falling into that trap sometimes of, like I write something and then I ask AI to improve it and I'm like, oh, that is better. So I'm going to go with the way AI would say it. So, because it oftentimes does make the message more concise or more like clear, but at the same time, maybe it takes away a bit of my personality from the writing, right? So yeah, it's interesting. I think, yeah.
I was going to say, who's training who? Are we training AI or is it training us?
I was going to say, on the other hand, you can train the AI on your style. So, and actually we use Grammarly, and Grammarly has a lot of AI capabilities built into it now. And so, and I found it's a really powerful tool for actually like helping you maintain consistent style across a project. And, and it's really, which is really important when you have many, many writers working on one project. So I think, there's some benefits to that when it comes to like, when you want to create the tone of voice for a brand, for example, versus your own personal tone of voice. When it's your own personal writing, you do want to have your own kind of flair on it.
Cool. What languages are the most challenging, both from the content creation side, but then also we can talk about the ad copy side for like the call to actions and things like that. And maybe it's the same languages, or maybe there's nuances that are different. But what have you seen?
Well, that's like, I can't say that I'm an expert on every language in the planet. That's why we have the team of linguists who do that. But definitely you see with ad copy, I mean, for example, the two languages that I speak, English and Spanish, it's oftentimes like things are said in fewer words in English versus Spanish. So it takes up like sometimes you need to translate a claim, and it's, trying to get the same idea in there in the same amount of space is not always possible. So you have to adapt the whole message. But yeah, in terms of a particular language, that's the hardest. That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. No, I'm sure that you've seen a lot of different projects with a lot of different languages, and I was wondering if someone's like, oh my God, how are we going to get that done?
Well, we do specialize in European languages, especially Western European languages, like the major markets. So we really are focused on helping companies expand into Europe. So those are languages we work with the most.
Okay.
I mean, Dutch has some long words, maybe. So.
Are the key search engines and or the main search engines, i.e. Google, and the social media platforms, are they pretty much the same across Europe, or are there big differences?
Not huge differences. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work with like meta platforms, of course, which are very widely adopted across Europe, and as well as like TikTok. We've had a lot of growth and demand for TikTok content.
So what, for TikTok, is it B2C or B2B customers?
It's been B2C. Like most of our clients are B2C up to now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have worked with a couple different companies that are saying, yeah, we need to have a TikTok strategy. I'm like, I don't know what it could be, because I see it as more of a B2C kind of platform. But maybe for recruitment, possibly. I don't know, if you're trying to, because, that might be.
I've seen I've actually been researching B2B strategies myself, just because we launched our kind of own test TikTok platform for ourselves, for our own brand, VeraContent, just to kind of like use it for experimentation and seeing what we can do with it. And so I was doing some market research on other agencies and B2B companies using TikTok, and I've found some pretty cool things. I mean, some are podcasts that have been repurposed for TikTok, and some, like, I've seen some that actually get like really good traction. So like finding really surprising quotes from the podcast and things like that. And then I've even seen like TikTok now has longer formats, and I've seen like instructional things, tutorials and things like that get tons of views on TikTok. So I think it started out being just this kind of fun, silly content, but I think there's increasingly like a wide variety of content on TikTok that different things are working. Just gotta like test and try it out if that's a place where you wanna be.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned podcasts, something that I like to talk about, because I host two right now. What are some best practices that you've seen for repurposing the content or leveraging it or getting exposure? Because there's not a lot of people that are going to go onto YouTube and watch a 45-minute podcast compared to, say, maybe shorts or maybe, so like, what are some of the key best practices?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on podcasting. So actually, like,
What did you see specifically on TikTok that you thought was pretty cool? Like, what were they doing?
Yeah, well, there was one channel in particular of an agency that I was looking at that, I mean, has like a really highly produced, well done podcast, and that was done in a studio and stuff, and they were taking clips from that and doing some dramatic music and stuff. I don't know. They were getting a lot of views on it. So,
how long were the clips?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, probably 30 seconds or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I can share it with you after a few
Okay.
So, but yeah, I wanted to say what I found, so we don't do podcast production, at least up to now. So could be something we expand into, but I definitely see podcasts as being a really useful source for repurposing. So like a lot of our clients like have podcasts, and we repurpose content for that to like create blog posts and social media posts and all that kind of stuff, because I think it's a good chance to get full, like really like firsthand insights onto things. That can be, even if the podcast format maybe isn't as great for people to, it's like only a certain number of people are going to listen to an entire podcast, right? But you can still take pieces of that and use it in other parts of your content, and it's original. It's like something nobody else has, because it's firsthand information from an expert usually.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, what I've been doing with the Grow Fast podcast, which is part of the, Breeze, is taking the transcripts and at least posting those, because you get some SEO benefit there. But then we just recently started creating shorts, and it's amazing. You upload a short, and depending on sometimes the algorithm, but you might get immediately get like 1,000 views, which for a longer form podcast might take a couple weeks before it gets up to that number. So it's kind of cool. And I haven't tried any of the other platforms. So I'm just right now only on YouTube. So, and I probably should get with this TikTok thing. Give me maybe an overview of a project that you've been involved in, like that's related to multilingual content across for social media, and something that you thought, hey, this was pretty cool and had cool results.
Like one of our social media clients, an example. Well, we have several, but I guess like one that is a pretty cool product that we started working with recently it's like a reading app called Libby, and we're working with them across 3 markets right now. So it's Germany, the UK, and Australia. And basically we're managing Instagram. So and that involves creating both kind of static content as well as video content for Reels, and that's been really fun because they do a lot of like, I don't know, pop culture stuff, and it's like a fun account, consumer focused. So, and
when you localize, is it dubbed, is it subtitled, or is it recreated in the target language?
So the videos that we do for them are basically, the strategy on each account is completely different, and we have different content. So it's a unique content calendar for each market. So that means the videos are created for that market too, and created by local content creators.
Awesome. we talked about ChatGPT. Any other AI and Grammarly? Any other AI or LLM related tools that you guys use, or are you starting to see becoming more common?
In terms of like generative AI for writing, obviously ChatGPT and Gemini are like the market leaders and kind of what everyone's been adopting. But some unique tools that we use that have AI capabilities would be like we use tools for subtitling, for example, of the videos. And now, like the AI generated transcriptions are really accurate, so you can add subtitles to a video really quickly. And we use a couple different tools depending on the project. We use one called Subly, and we use another one called Veed.io, which actually does a lot more AI things for video editing. And then, also for dubbing, I'd say there's one called Rask.ai. That's really cool for doing like AI voice clones. It's something we've been trying to sell clients on, but most of our clients still want to do human dubbing because, yeah.
Well, I would say an AI voice clone. So for example, if I was using that platform, I could train it on my voice and then it would dub using my voice. The assumption, I guess, is that it would be a lot more affordable and quicker than having a human go to a studio and record. I guess that's an assumption, but
yes.
So okay.
It's also easier in the sense that like you don't have to. It like automatically times it to the original video. So actually, what we've been using it for is we'll use the AI voice clone to get it like matched up, and then hire a human to dub it. So like, which is interesting because that's one challenge whenever.
I mean, that's a really cool application of the tool. That's not what it was designed for, but it's going to get the timing right. So all I have to do is just kind of mirror that timing, and that's pretty cool.
Because the cool thing about this tool, it'll actually based on it'll suggest like shortening a phrase or to make it the same length as the original one, because based on kind of like the timestamps, it suggests it, and it like lines it up as if it were a cat tool. So it like shows you the original transcript and then the translated one, and then you can edit it. So that's really cool that you can.
The name of that tool again was?
It's Rask.ai, Rask.
Awesome. Do you consider yourself more of a marketing expert or a content creation expert or a translation expert or a generalist? I mean, where would you say your main expertise lies?
Yeah, definitely more on the content creation side and writing. My background's in journalism. So I worked as a newspaper journalist before like kind of falling into translation, because I studied journalism. I did an MBA, and after that I did the MBA in Spain. So I was in Spain, and basically lots of companies in Spain want native English speakers to help them create content in English. So, but I think anyone who works basically anyone who works in marketing in Europe or communications or marketing ends up doing translation because you're working across markets. So that's how I got into the translation space. I was basically doing content in English, but we needed it in more languages too. I was working in-house in a company working with vendors, and then I thought like I could do that better. So I'm going to start my own agency, and that's kind of how I got into it.
And where do you go to kind of keep abreast of the latest trends, tools, techniques for content creation?
Where do I look for tools on content creation?
Or just different techniques or trends? I mean, because we're talking about like different ways to create content, but the landscape is continually to evolve, and it's evolving quick at an increasingly rapid pace.
I mean, I'd say like one newsletter that I follow, and we actually just did a collaboration with, is called the Geek Out newsletter from Matt Navarra. I don't know if you know it, but it's really good for keeping up on like social media trends. It's all about what's the latest happening in social media.
Awesome. And do you go to any industry events, whether it's localization or content creation?
No, but I would like to start. This is a goal for me for 2025. So not really. My background's in tech journalism. So I used to go to a lot of tech and startup related events, and I realized like that's not my scene anymore. I need to start going to localization and or marketing events. So
I think Gala last year was in Valencia.
Yeah, it was actually. I almost went to that.
Yeah.
That would have been easy for me. But yeah,
Awesome.
There's one going to be in Barcelona soon. I don't remember which, but probably looking at that one. So
good to know. Let me ask you, for aspiring writers, I think you already touched on it, that they need to get the cover letter right. Do they need to be should they be a generalist or a specialist? Like, for example, when you're looking for a writer, are you looking for like deep subject matter expertise, or are you looking more on that ability to write?
More on the ability to write in general, although it depends on the project. But I'd say like the ideal is, the important thing is people who know how to write. Those are the profiles we're looking for, because the subject matter expertise, we can generally source it from the client through interviews.
Makes sense.
And it's difficult. It's really difficult to find someone who has both things. But depending on the project, because sometimes there is a project that it's like, okay, we really need someone who knows the subject, but that means you need the budget for that. Finding the magic bullet of someone who has the knowledge and the writing ability is tricky. So
cool. Well,
and they're probably like writing for a top publication already.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Always, like the best people, it's really tough to get them, right? I mean, I've spent. I told you recently looking for writers, but throughout my career, I've run sales and marketing organizations, and hiring top quality salespeople can be a challenge because they've already got a good gig, and why would they want to leave, right? And so it's trying to identify people who have that basic talent and can take it to the next level.
And so for someone like, I come from a journalism background, and in journalism, you have to be a generalist to a degree. Like I did business journalism, so you have to like learn a subject really quickly and be able to distill it and make it understandable for anyone. And I think a good writer can do that, can take on pretty much any subject.
I would agree. Do you miss working as a journalist?
Yes and no. Like I like what I'm doing now, but yeah, there's some things I missed about journalism. I miss writing. That's something I haven't done myself in a while, and so it's something I'm also 2025 goal maybe to get back into that and write some of my own things again.
Yeah, I hear about people who have like a daily routine for journaling or for writing something, and I always say I want to do that, but it's like it somehow always takes a back seat to whatever else I'm doing. So let me ask you, when it comes to your company, like are you all, do you have somebody who's responsible for marketing for VeraContent, or do you guys do it collaboratively?
Yeah, we do. One of my two business partners is kind of in charge of our marketing function internally.
Okay, and do you get inbound leads, or are they mostly referrals from people from other customers that you've worked with, or introductions, or do you combination?
Combination, yeah, but definitely referrals and like inbound leads. We don't do outbound, so that's pretty much nice. Where they all come from. Yeah,
that's nice. That's excellent. Yeah. And and is that driven from, because I think you guys also have a podcast, right? You do your podcast, and then you have I don't know how many languages your site is in. Is it multilingual, the website?
No, actually, we only do marketing in English, since our targets mainly English markets. We pretty much target Europe and the US. So
do you do any AdWords or anything like that?
AdWords, we have, yeah, but it's not currently.
Well, and the reason I ask is because you're working in the marketing space, and sometimes companies who specialize in one thing, sometimes they take a more relaxed approach on their own projects. And but if you're getting enough inbound and you're getting those word of mouth, I mean, that's those are golden, right? So nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of our own content marketing. Like you said, we have the podcast, we have the blog, we do social media, we do some kind of influencer collaboration type things. So that's what we get the word out about what we do that way. So through marketing, not as much through, I guess, direct sales.
Give me an example of an influencer that you've worked with.
Well, I was just mentioning Matt Navarra, that we did a collaboration with him. So, and we did a webinar together. So that was our recent thing, and we have more collaborations in the pipeline. So
awesome. Well, we're almost to the end of 2024, and I think you said for next year you have a target of doing some writing, a target of maybe going to some industry events. Personally or organizationally, are there any other big things that you're going to be working on next year?
Well, I mean, continuing to grow the business, that's number one. That'll probably get more of my focus than the writing, to be honest. So yeah, we have ambitious growth goals for Vera in the next year. So excited to put those into action. Awesome.
Well, hey, Shaheen, thank you again for staying up late and coming on the memoQ Talks podcast. It's been great talking with you, and I'd like to wish you and the entire VeraContent team an amazing end to 2024 and a very, very happy New Year 2025.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Happy New Year to you as well.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.